You're listening to the IMT Show with Mike Sims. Now here is your host.
All right. I have a big treat today. I have Fern Brady on the show, and she is the owner of Inklings Publishing and also an author of a number of books. And welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me here, Mike. It's so much fun to be here with you tonight.
Well, thank you. So I got to know what made you get into writing?
Well, in terms of writing, I've always been a writer, right? I mean, as writers, we know we start off when we're little. We're making up worlds. We're writing cute stories. I remember writing little stories and skits for my parents, and I had this little puppet theater that my mom had given me, or my grandma. And so I would set up little storylines, and I charged them money for the popcorn that they provided. So I've always been in the story writing business, but professionally, it started with getting connected with the Houston Writers Guild. For years I just wrote on my own, in my classroom and such. And then one day I met this fellow teacher who was a member of the guild. She was going to some critique groups, and she invited me. And I signed up that same night. I was like, oh, this is awesome. Getting
Right.
Who knew there was so much support for writers out there.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and then that's where it started, okay, oh, I could do this. I could actually consider putting forth these stories somewhere in for people to actually read them, and that was what got me there.
Well, that's definitely something the Writers Guild has been a big help for a lot of people, and that's how mainly we met. And you were nice enough to share some tables at conferences and stuff with me, and I appreciate that. And that's something normally I wouldn't be able to do, and so I appreciate that.
Yeah, and we enjoy that. And I've always felt that in our industry, in the writing industry, there is the competition element of industries and in business is sort of not the same, because people can buy many books, and readers buy multiple books, and they buy multiple authors, so it doesn't make sense to not help each other.
Yeah.
It can only help you. And so it's always fun for me, and it makes it more fun when you're there at these events, when you have other authors you can chat with and hang out together.
I definitely remember the library convention. It was like 7,000 people will go through that thing, and for a library convention, it was pretty loud.
It was. I think those poor librarians were really struggling with not telling everybody to shh.
Or maybe this is their outlet time,
You can see it in their face. You can see it in their face, like, poor darling. But you know what? It was awesome because it did bring people into the library,
Yeah.
which, I think it's one of those things where we forget that the library has, it's a great resource. And we don't always, of course, we want people to buy our books, right? I mean,
Right.
as writers, we want people to buy our books. But, the library is a great place to get books, and to, if you're having a difficulty, or you want to get some books for your kids, it's just such a wonderful thing that we have.
There's a lot of books I bought actually because I read them from the library, and I just had to have them.
Yeah.
It's just some I wanted to reread later.
Yeah. What's your favorite?
There was it was actually one that came to me was from a movie called Dangerous Minds. And I was like, it's an all right movie, but I saw that was based on a book. So I went and checked out the book, and it was My Homies Don't Do Homework. And it was much more interesting than the movie. A lot of the stuff didn't happen, that was in the movie. But this lady that was a teacher ended up, well, she was extraordinary, and it was very interesting what she went through and what she did for him.
Yeah. And then you know, those are really beautiful stories when you see real life people making a difference in people's lives. Those really do. They give you hope.
Yeah.
They give you hope.
So you got a Thyrene's Galactic Wall, is that right?
Yep, that's my universe that I
Aha.
made up.
So tell us about this universe.
All right. Well, Thyrene's Galactic Wall was born because I was a teacher, you know, and as a teacher, I taught language arts and reading, you know, the ELA program, and I taught social studies because the whole school had to teach social studies, you know, in the way we blocked out our time. And so one of the things that I did was to start kind of cross pollinating the lessons. So we had to talk about geography with our kids and teach the geographic features and the impact that geography has on cultural developments and things like that. And so as we did that, I pulled that into the language arts. And we started by just creating a planet, right? And
Hmm.
so we just studied these geographic features. Let's create a planet. And once we had the planet built, well, where would our civilizations arise, right? Looking at different things in social studies, how can we apply them to our made up world, right? And then of course, you know, we would read about like mythologies and legends and things like that, and so we would pull them in, like, now let's create some for our world. And so before I knew it, you know, I had all these stories built around Planet Jorn, which was in Thyrene's galactic wall, because eventually I had created multiple planets, because, you know, every year I had to make a planet.
Right.
So, you know, I had all these planets and all these legends and all this background on them, and that's where it was born. It was born with my kids, with my sixth graders,
Hmm.
you know. And I think that was like one of the best parts of teaching, was just watching them bring in what we were learning over here into our writing, you know, and getting creative with it and applying it, which I think benefited them in the sense that not just we had fun writing
Right.
and the writing skills, but, you know, it cemented so many of the concepts and things that we were studying elsewhere, because we were actually creating something.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And then from there it expanded, you know, once I had novels and all these short stories that I was beginning to really flesh out, it began to expand. And now I have like maps of the galaxies, like there's 7 main galaxies, and I looked up on NASA
Hmm.
to see, okay, where can I find a galaxy that's near ours, right? Because Earth is in Thyrene's galactic wall, but we are not privy
Right.
to what's going on. And so I was like, okay, which ones are around us? And I picked them, and I was like, hey, this is going to be for these group of planets, and this one's going to be for this group of planets. So, you know, I did my best to really ground it into our actual universe, but it's, you know, completely made up.
Wow. That's cool. That reminds me a lot of the you know, the author of the Lord of the Rings. He wrote his books, but he had wrote this entire timeline, huge timeline of everything, and only his books were only small parts of it, so that
Yeah.
he had continuity.
Yes, I have that too. One time, my editor, my developmental editor, Max Regan, he was like, you know, it would be great to have, because I would talk about that, right? I would be like, in this book, and well, like, you know, this is happening because blah blah happened way back over here, and blah blah. And he's like, it would be great if I had like a document of that. So I was like, oh great, now I have to design one. It's all in my head. And so one time I started, you know, I sat down, made a table, you know, and I was like, okay, so everything began and blah blah, you know, and just went through. And it, when I sent it to him, he accidentally just clicked print before noticing how many pages. It was like
Oh,
20 something pages of the history, but it outlined the whole history, right? Of
wow.
yeah, yeah. He was like, burn. He was like, you should have given me a heads up about this. I was like, I'm sorry.
There's some more paper.
I'm like, let me gift you a ream. No, but it was great because it really did make me have to sit down and think about, when does this happen and when does that happen, you know? And then, you
Awesome.
know, as authors, you're an author, and you know, suddenly this new story pops into your head. And all of a sudden you're figuring out, where does that fit in? You know, where did you come from? You know,
Right.
where am I plugging you in on my outline? Yeah.
Cool. So what has been the your book journey been like so far?
It has been fun. It has been very, very fun. Like I said, I mean, because, you know, I've been just in the creative process of, you know, fleshing out the world so that the books themselves feel very real and grounded in things. Um, it has not been as easy to get it out as I had thought because um, you know, it's taken several rounds of revisions, you know. As an author, it's we write it and we think it's done, and then we send it off to like an editor and they're like, well, this is confusing, or you know, this could be fleshed out more, or maybe you should cut out this whole like info dump
Right.
that you put in there and build it more organically. And so, you know, as I've been on this journey, I have discovered a lot of the practice of writing, the, you know, becoming more of a working writer, and you know, treating it as a practice, as a daily practice that I do, instead of something that's just sort of fun and magical that I do every once in a while. You know, it has become, you know, something that I purposely sit down and write, you know, and I plan it into my schedule. And these are my writing times. And this is what I'm going to focus on. And it has become a lot more structured as and especially now that the first book is officially out, because, you know, before it was all short stories.
Right.
And so those are not as, you know, fans are not demanding that you produce more short stories, you know, in random anthologies all over the place. But now that there's like the novel, the first book is there, now it's kind of like, okay, you know, we're beginning to get a readership, we're beginning to get some fans, you know, so we really need to produce that second book and bring it out in a timely fashion. And so then there's the pressure to, you know, get it done, and
Right.
which wars against the whole, you know, you want it to be really fabulous. So you have to like
Right.
weigh it to, okay, you want to make it as fabulous as you can, but you got to get it done in a timely fashion.
Right. You just got to get to a point where you just have to abandon it.
Yeah. Because you know, as a writer, you know, we could revise a
Oh,
book forever.
yeah.
And
And for me, I think it, you know, I get to the point where I'm probably damaging it, you know, make it more.
yeah, yeah, because at some point you end up coming back to like maybe the first way you wrote something.
Yeah.
You revised it so much that you ended up back where you started in the beginning, you know.
Or I
So
got so much dialogue in there, you know, the reader's like, what's the point of this? You know, trying
or
to say here.
yeah, talking heads, you know, oh my gosh, you didn't ground it or whatever. You do have to, at some point, the story is good, it's going to be engaging, it has satisfactory ending, it's got to go out, you know.
Excellent.
Yeah,
So you started a publishing company,
I did.
Inklings Publishing, which is inklingspublishing.com is the website.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Well, when I first started in the writing community, you know, with the Houston Writers Guild, I got involved with that. And then I joined the board and then later became the head of the guild. I began to learn a lot about self-publishing, about indie pubbing. And, you know, it was not hard, you know, I mean, it's not easy.
Right.
but but I thought to myself, you know, this is something I can do. I mean, if you can run a business, basically that's really what it is. You're running a business, and you have to, as an independently published author, and you know this because you're doing your own books, you have to treat that side of the publication of your book as a business versus the writing of the book, which is more artistic.
Right.
And so, if you have that ability, you have that mindset to create a business and run it as such, then you really, really can do it. The tools are there. There's costs, of course.
Oh yeah.
But it's a doable thing. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized, I could do this. And, at the time, I didn't really have a novel. I was working on one, but it was nowhere near being ready to be released. And I saw a lot of authors struggling to get published and struggling to get their work out there. And I thought, well, I can't, in the beginning, we couldn't really publish individual authors. But I thought, well, anthologies, right? Short story collections. It gives authors a chance to put their work out somewhere in a collection with other authors. So everybody is, promoting that collection. So you're getting visibility from all these other authors. It gives us a chance to promote as many authors as we can. And I thought, well, I'll just start there. And that's where, Inkling started, is just with the idea of helping authors just build up their careers. And, we went to a writer's retreat. I got a chance to go to a writer's retreat that was, not expensive at all, because I was just invited by a friend. And he wasn't charging us, other than our taking care of our own food and things.
Right.
And so it was great. And so when I came back from that and I started looking at how much retreats cost, a writer's retreat is more than $1,000, and that's just for the actual retreat. That doesn't even include your travel, your food, your stay. And so I thought, gosh, that's terrible. Author can't do that. And then I thought, well, this little company could do that. We could
Right.
publish the anthologies, make a little bit of money. We could spend that money on offering this opportunity. And that's where it all began. It was just the opportunity to create a platform for as many authors as we could.
Right.
And eventually it grew into a publishing house. We got our first author through the anthologies, because Meg Halfdahl was our first ever author. I met her through the short stories that she had submitted, and she was such a great writer. And I pitched her the idea, hey, why don't you do a collection of short stories for us?
Right.
And so she came on board, and that was our first, individual author. And little by little, we're now we now have 15 authors under contract.
Yeah.
So it's been fun.
Well, I know I mentioned your publishing company too, because people, especially on the Facebook groups, there's one that's got like 100,000 authors on it, and once in a while they'll wander over, find me, and they'll ask, can you mentor me or whatever, and I always say, you probably want to talk to Fern, go to this website, and she can answer a lot of your questions. Also, it's you have to be very careful out there, because there's a lot of pitfalls.
Oh, I know you fell into one, my friend, early on.
I was able to get out of that one, but also learn from them.
Yeah.
And it's like anything. There's just all kinds of stuff out there that can trip you up. And of course, you have, when you're a new author, you're thinking, you have the masterpiece, and you're going to go take it to an agent, and they're going to be so excited about it. They're going to take it to the big 5 publishers, and they're all going to bid and fight over it. And then you're going to be a millionaire in 2 years.
Right. That's everybody's dream.
And
don't forget that it's going to get picked up by like a major motion picture company, and it's going to be made into a movie, and everybody in the world is going to see it.
Oh yeah.
That's the other part of the dream.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You're going to be a billionaire, like J.K. Rowling, or, and the others. But it's, in which it can happen, but, winning the lottery can happen too.
Yes.
But what's your odds? So
Yeah, and you just have to be prepared as an author. And I appreciate that you recommend us, because we, and I do, I do. I take time to give authors, feedback, and just let them know, hey, here's what I think you should do, and here's some things to keep in mind, because it's so easy to be taken advantage of. It's so these scammer services that promise to do all this for your book, and then they do nothing.
yeah,
And they're preying on your dream, like all criminals. They prey on something, a hope that someone has, and it's a terrible thing to see authors have to go through that. And you were very blessed to be able to get out of that mess, and then later, of course, they came to their legal end.
they did for a fact, but they left 30,000 authors out in the cold, and not just that, but musicians.
Yeah.
And some of the authors actually had bestsellers, and they were owed over $1 million in royalties and never got a dime.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's it was very sorrowful and bad for a lot of people.
It is. And that kind of brings me back to like the Houston Writers Guild and organizations like that, like Authorology, is a newer one, but it's a really good one. Very dedicated people behind it. As a writer, as an aspiring author, you're entering into this business, you need to hook up with these kinds of organizations, because they're the ones that are going to be able to provide you some guidance and also some vetted resources.
Yeah.
And one of the big benefits to them is that, if you're wondering if this particular publishing company or this offer sounds a little too good to be true, you can reach out to these kinds of organizations and see, hey, have you guys heard of it? Because they're always putting on conferences and,
Right.
and events. And so they're constantly vetting industry professionals.
Yeah.
And seeing, okay, are they for real? I remember one year for the Houston Writers Guild, we had our conference, and we had an agent with their agency was going to send a representative. And then it came to our attention that this agent was now charging authors for editing their work and all these other things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's huge red flag.
Yeah.
Huge red. You don't do that. That's not how agency works. It's not how agents work. And I remember having to, call and uninvite them, to the conference, because we were not going to put them in front of our authors to have our authors have to pay,
Well, as I've had to explain to a newbie author, that you not only have to have a good agent, but you have to have the right agent that has relationships with these big publishers, because they're only as good as their last success.
Yes.
And if they have a failure book, they're probably not going to have that relationship anymore. I mean, the agents, they come and go all the time. I had 2 or 3 agents that wanted to represent me on Southern Cross, and they're not agents anymore.
Yeah.
I just waited and I checked them out later, and they're gone. So, it's just the desperation, I guess, of trying to find something to upstart them.
Yes. Yes. And that's also true in terms of, like you just said, checking them. Authors have to be constantly checking. And certain agencies have stood the test of time. They represent multiple authors and such, but the agents within often come and go. So you do have that situation where some authors will have begun with one agent, and then they're switched to like another, because now the agency is still there, but the agent is no longer. So
thank you for listening to the IMT show with Mike Sims. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The IMT show is an opinion show and not to be taken as serious personal, legal, tax or financial advice. It is meant as entertainment only. IMT Show, Mazaroff or Mike Sims is not responsible for ad content. For more information on show schedules and content, visit www.mazaroff.net/IMT.